Mr. President, it's Thursday, and I know the pages know this, and many people watching know this, but it's that time of the day in the Senate where I come down on the Senate floor and talk about somebody who makes my state a very unique and special place. Opportunity for me to talk a little bit about what's going on in Alaska right now, particularly before the holidays. Somebody we refer to in Alaska, and here in the Senate is the Alaskan of the Week. And before I get into this very special Alaskan, I'll give you a little weather update. A lot of people like to understand what's going on. Winter has come. It's coming to Alaska. Snow's arrived throughout much of the state. South central Alaska has come. Anchorage is covered in snow. A lot of people are getting ready to undertake winter sports and activities. On Monday in Utqiagvik, the northernmost point in North America, used to be called Barrow, Point Barrow, the sun rose and set for the last time until January 23rd. So it's going to be dark up there. But they're used to that. Great people. Great people. The community is now officially settled in for a bit of a dark Arctic winter, but they've been doing that for millennial. And it's a winter wonderland right now throughout Alaska. So I always encourage people watching on TV, come on up. Summer, winter, fall, spring, come on up, visit. You'll love it. It'll be the trip of a lifetime. And as I mentioned before, Mr. President, I think I come from the most beautiful state in the country, but it's also a place made up of so many important, caring, wonderful, generous, supportive people anywhere. And some of these people have had ancestors living in Alaska for thousands and thousands of years. Others arrived more recently, but immediately found a home in a community that they were supportive of and were supportive of them. So let me introduce to you Rosemary Habeich, Rosie, her friends call her, an extraordinary Alaskan who has done extraordinary things for our people, and she is our Alaskan of the Week. So what has she done? What's extraordinary about Rosie? Well, let me just mention one off the top, which is pretty remarkable. Fostering over 50 Alaskan children with her husband, Evan Hobson Jr. I should add here that Evan is the son of the first mayor of Alaska's North Slope Borough, and someone who has also fought for the rights of Alaska Natives throughout all his life. He deserves mention, as well as his wife, as a legendary Alaskan. So not only did Rosie and Eben foster all these children, they adopted 3, raised 5 of their own children, and that's a crowded household, but a kind and loving and supportive household, a warm household, a place of love. Mr. President, I could say here that the recommendation for Rosie to be our Alaskan of the Week comes from our first Alaskans Institute fellow, Elizabeth Akiviavik, who's right here with me, who's done a great job in my office. And Elizabeth is one of dozens and dozens of children that Rosie and Eben took into their bright home, loved them so much so that they could love themselves. So let me tell you a little bit about Rosie, our Alaskan of the Week. She was born in Idaho, and like too many Americans, unfortunately, she actually came from a broken home. Her mother was battling an illness and sometimes was too sick to handle Rosie and her siblings. It was during one of those bouts of illness that Rosie herself briefly became a foster child. That experience, and the experience of visiting her mother in an institution, and the kindness of neighbors who stepped up and helped during those very difficult years, would form the basis of Rosie's steadfast belief that helping others in your community throughout your state is a higher calling. Eventually, Rosie moved with her family to Fairbanks, where she was just a young girl, and those were good years for her and her family. She thrived in Alaska, went to college, became a social worker for the state. Eventually, her work took her to Utqiagvik, as I mentioned, formerly Barrow, Alaska, where she fell in love both with her husband, Eben, and with the community. She found that in Utiavik, if you had a good idea and were willing to do the work and see it through, you could succeed with the help of others. And she did succeed. At various points during her time in the North Slope borough of our great state, she worked as the director of the city's rec department, director of the health department, executive director of the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. She also sat on the board for the Rural Alaska Community Action Plan. She was a public health nurse and was appointed director of the North Slope Borough Health Department by 2 different mayors. That is an impressive resume, as you see. She now spends much of her time in Anchorage, where she volunteers for a group called Friends in Serving Humanity, or FISH, a church network that feeds the hungry. On many days, you can find her in different communities handing out meals and food boxes, often paid for out of her own pocket. Mr. President, Rosie gives her all to everything she does. But one of her truly lasting contributions to Alaska and to her community is how she has taken in so many children across the state who need a home, who need support, who need love. She took in siblings, she took in infants, she took in teenagers. She took them from all backgrounds, from all across the state, and she loved them. She was patient with them. She intuitively understood what they needed and when they needed it. Some of the children she took in were horribly abused. Most others were homesick. Some were confused. In Alaska, getting running water to households across the state has long been a major challenge, one that we are still working on today. If you can believe this is certainly one of my passions in the Senate. We have over 30 communities in Alaska with no flush toilets, no water and sewer in America. Many of the children that came to Rosie were from these kind of households and these kind of communities. Many had never flushed a toilet in their life. She was sensitive to all this, and one of the first things she did when a child came to her was to teach her how a faucet and a bathroom and a toilet work. And then she fed them. Rosie's cooking is renowned. She listened to them and loved them. This is how one of her former foster children described the experience of walking into Rosie's home. Quote, "Imagine coming from a place with nothing, poverty, and you walk into a normal house filled with normal things that people in the rest of America take for granted. A warm house, a flush toilet, food on the stove, adults who speak to you kindly. It was like visiting a toy store for the first time. It was like visiting a different planet. It showed us what a good life could be like." Mr. President, not all of Rosie's kids made it out of a life of challenges and dysfunction and abuse, but many of them have. Many have broken the cycle of violence in their families for the first time. Some of them, along with their biological children and the ones she has adopted, are now doing great things for our state and our country. They are successfully running businesses. They have joined the military. They've worked at high levels of government. One of them is sitting right here next to me on the Senate floor, working in my office, and we're lucky to have Elizabeth. But all of them, regardless of where they are now, quote, "have a place in my heart," says Rosie. Why does she do it? Why has this woman given herself to so many others and changed so many lives? She tells a story about a time when her mother was sick and had to go back into the institution, leaving her to take care of her 4 younger siblings. It was Christmas time, and Rosie literally had nothing. So the neighbors got together, left boxes of presents at the door at their house and brought over a Christmas dinner when she was young and needed help. That's the way life's supposed to be, Rosie said. You're supposed to recognize when people have less than you, and you're supposed to help them out. It doesn't matter if you're looking at it through a biblical lens or through karma or through Buddha. Giving is fundamental. That's her quote. Giving is fundamental. Mr. President, all the senators here today are heading home, heading back to the great states we represent for Thanksgiving, which we will be celebrating next week, a uniquely American holiday that all of us love and cherish so much. I know I certainly do. Rosie and Eben's story and commitment to others is exactly the kind of things we as Americans should be thankful for as we're celebrating Thanksgiving next week. Giving is fundamental. I know I am thankful for what they've done. Their household will be full this holiday season, friends, family, children. At some point this season, she'll make her famous apple sausage stuffing, a recipe that she learned from her own foster mother and one that she's passed down to foster kids all across the great state of Alaska. It's made with love and with kindness and with thanksgiving. So Rosie, thank you for all you've done. From the bottom of my heart, thanks for your spirit, your generosity, your example as we head into Thanksgiving weekend, for touching so many lives across Alaska. And congratulations on being our Alaskan of the Week, and happy Thanksgiving.